Hi everyone, Tally and Farrell here from Bored of It, and we're back and we're ready to do it all over again. And what we mean by that is we're back with another instalment of our series, Best Board Games for Two Players, that are not specifically designed for two players.
And if you have seen this series before, then thank you for returning and you know what's happening. We've time-stamped all the games so you can jump to the ones that you want to look at. And also this time we've ordered them generally from lightest in complexity to highest. And we're going to section it so you can also kind of watch through the section of games that fits you. If you are new, thank you for joining. And what this is these days a lot of people will primarily play board games at the two-player count for a variety of reasons. But while it's easy to find lists of the best board games for two players, because it's kind of a niche genre in gaming of board games that are specifically designed for two players, people have other interests. You know, it's not that the genre is not fun, but you're obviously going to have other games you want to get. And if that game says 2 to 7 and you're mainly going to play at 2, you are going to wonder, is that game actually any good at 2? Or as a designer, just slap that on the box to sell more? Are you going to be playing a variant? Does that game miss something that you get when you play with more? So it's tough to work out if it's a good game to spend your money on or not. And this video is an attempt where we're going to go through some games that are designed for more than two players, but that we really enjoy playing at two players, or maybe they're even better at two players than higher player counts. Yeah. And we're going to go through these games, and what we're going to do is we're going to give you a blurb on them, maybe describe how they work a little bit, then we're going to tell you why is it good at two players, and how does it differ if you play with more. Lastly, we're going to tell you why we generally like it, what's special about that game. Because these games are going to be the kind of highlights that we've been playing over the last 6 months. But there's a big mix of popular games, new games, old classics, and just maybe weird, more obscure ones. So we appreciate you joining. Yeah. If this is helpful, we'd love it if you could subscribe. And we will now get onto the games themselves.
So first up we have Cascadia, and this is a puzzly tile laying game from the same publishers as Calico. And on your turn, all you'll be doing is taking a landscape tile and a corresponding animal token, and you can place these anywhere in your own personal landscape. Each of the animals will score in a different way, so this is going to be driving where you place them in your landscape. But the trick is to combine all 5 animal types in the most optimal way for scoring. But you also need to be thinking about how you can score for contiguous terrain types.
So why is it good at two players? Well, honestly, some games, even though you can play with more, and this is 1 to 4 players, are just better at two players. And this is definitely one of them. And this is because, firstly, the game has no interaction. So it doesn't matter how many players there are, you're still going to have the same great experience. But when you have more players, you get more downtime without getting anything extra from the experience. So it is preferable to play with less so you can have more game. And the other part is that because you take the tiles and the tokens from the middle, with 4 players, there's going to be a lot more influx and the people are going to be taking them. So there's no point thinking about what you want before it's your turn, because it likely won't be there anymore. Whereas at 2, you have kind of a 3 out of 4 chance it will still be there, which means you can strategize and the game moves a bit quicker in that respect. But yeah.
So this is the game to get if you like games that are low complexity but still have a bit of crunch and brain work. It's also really relaxing to play. I think that's been a comment from a lot of people that we have played with. Very relaxing, very calming, very peaceful. It was actually Farrell's number 2 game from games that came out of the 2021. Yeah. And it was also in my top 10 list as well.
Big hit for us.
Yes.
One of our most played, I think.
Yes.
Yes. So that is Cascadia. Here we have the Quest For El Dorado, which is for 2 to 4 players. And this is a deck building race game from master designer Rainer Knizia. And the goal of the game is to be the first person to get to El Dorado. That's why it's a race. But how you do this is through playing cards and deck building. And what's interesting is that to move, you play a card, and then that will allow you potentially to move on certain types of hexes. So machete to move through the jungle spaces, for example. And the deck building comes in because you can buy better cards that might let you move further or give you special powers to do kind of, edit your deck, let's say, or draw extra cards that turn. Yep.
So why is it good at 2? Well, because it is a race game, it could be argued that it is better the more players you have, because obviously races create excitement and tension. But we personally think at 2, you do still get that same experience and thrill, but just with a small twist. So when you play at 2, each player has 2 explorers that they control, and you only win by getting both explorers to El Dorado. So what you might miss in table talk and kind of excitement, you get back with skill and strategy. It also makes the game a bit smoother because you're less likely to get stuck each round with not drawing the right cards, as you do in the 3 to 4 player version. Sometimes your explorer just gets stuck because you don't have the right cards.
Yeah.
Whereas here, because you have 2 explorers, you can just divert those cards to your other explorer.
Yeah, and it should work out. So who's this for? Well, this is kind of perfect if you're looking for something that you can play at 2 player, that if you like race games, if you like the tension of race games, if you like deck builders, it's another great one.
Yeah.
And in particular, it's great that if you want to play a game at 2 players here and there, but you also want to have a 2-player game that is good, that you can introduce to family members and friends who maybe aren't into board games or mildly into board games. This has been a really big hit actually with my family, in particular my mother and one of her friends came and stayed with us, and they absolutely loved it. So yeah. It's kind of a generational crosser as well. But yeah, so the Quest for El Dorado, great at 2, great at 4.
So our next game is Galaxy Trucker, and this is a real-time tile laying game in which there's a central pool of tiles and everyone will be taking the tiles in order to build a spaceship that's adaptable to a variety of situations. And then once everyone has built their ship, you'll go on a space flight by drawing cards which might give you opportunities, give you money, or maybe a more dangerous event such as a meteor shower. And the goal of the game is to make it to the end of the flight with your ship still intact, and whoever has the most money is going to be the winner.
So why play it at 2? Well, we've played this a lot since we got it, and we've mostly played it at 2 and had an absolute blast. And what was interesting is when we finally played with 4, and this is 2 to 4, that I thought the gameplay would change a little bit in terms of the tightness of taking these tiles from the middle, and it just didn't really. It didn't feel any different at all. And in part this was because it's quite solitaire, because for the first half of a game you play, you're going to be focusing on your own shipboard and taking tiles and like looking in central, and the other players don't affect that too much. I imagine if you played with the kind of level 3 ship, for example, that takes a lot more tiles, maybe things would get much tighter with 4 players. But generally if you're playing with a level 1 or 2 ship, there's not really a difference in feel. It's not like you can't get things you need still.
Yeah.
Yep, and I think the other thing that I would say is kind of maybe a little bit better playing at 2, because if you're the person to flip the last timer, signaling that you only have like 60 seconds left and no one else is ready, the more players, the more people are going to get pissed off with you. So if there's only one other player, you get less anger directed at you.
You don't mind if you annoy me.
No.
Well, not that you mind annoying anyone, but yeah. Anyway, we do think this is a slightly more complex game than your average sort of family weight game, but like Farrell was saying, there are a variety of levels to play in terms of how big the ship is, so that's really great. And what's really cool is that you can combine all of these levels together to make one game. But for new players, you can just play with the level 1 ship, have a game done in 10 minutes so they can get to grips with it, see how it goes, and then you just go again. Yeah. This is a great game for people that want something humorous and zany and where you're going to be laughing a lot at other people's misfortune. And what we will say is it is fairly luck-based. That's just something to be aware of. But in any case, at 2, 3, 4 players, pretty much the same experience, and you're going to have a lot of fun with it.
Now we have the beautiful reprint of Tinner's Trail, a game by Martin Wallace. And this is an economic auction resource management game. And it's all about tin mining in Cornwall. Woo!
Big up.
And obviously, very exciting theme. And what you're going to be doing is you're going to be auctioning on mines, and a lot of the time you won't know what's in them. So you kind of have this funny thing where you flip over and it's either really good or everyone else laughs at you because there's nothing but water. And most of these mines will come flooded with a bit of water. Water makes it more expensive to get the metal out, and so you can use action points to get machinery to get rid of the water. And it's about kind of managing your money to extract metal, but also to spend it for victory points. And you want to get the metal out, and then you sell it all at the end of every round, and the price is randomized. So there's a bit of when you take the metal out and when you sell it as well.
Yeah.
Yep.
So why do we enjoy it at 2 players? Well, usually with auction mechanics, they completely fall apart if you don't have at least 3 players. But sometimes games find a way to make it work, and this is definitely one of them. So when you start a bid, there's a minimum price as dictated by a card in the 2-player variant. So because you're at least paying a fair price for the mine, it doesn't allow other players to cut in later on and be able to buy a bunch of mines for nothing. So that works really well. The map, the size of the map and the availability of the machinery is also scaled according to the player count. So you still get that crunch and fight for the machinery, which makes it just as cutthroat at 2 players as it is with higher player counts. So beside those 2 points of interaction, the game is mostly spent working on your own mine, extracting your own metal. So for that part, you don't really lose anything at 2 players.
Yeah, and while you could say that it's something better played with more just because the auction mechanics pop, it's definitely not something you have to not get because you'll only play at 2 players. As we said, the auction mechanics translate very well down to 2 players. And it's a very nice game. Yeah. It's a bit lighter than most economic games. And there's a lot of kind of randomness in here that makes it quite spicy for a Euro, makes it feel different, even though it's an older game. And I think this is for you if you like Martin Wallace games or economic games, or you just kind of want something a bit lighter and pretty looking to have a bit of fun, or you're really into mining. But yeah.
And pasties.
And pasties, yes. So that is Tinner's Trail by Martin Wallace.
And we do have a full review of this, which we'll put down in the description box below.
Yep.
So our next game is Orléans, and I hope my pronunciation of that was okay. It's a bag building Euro, which we've become super fond of because, quite frankly, it's just really fun to draw the stuff out of the bag, and it also has some really smart mechanisms for negating luck. We would talk about the theme, but really, what theme? You are medieval people doing medieval things, and if you look at it hard enough, it all falls apart.
Yeah. So why is it good at 2 players? Well, so this game is some versions of 2 to 4. Capstone Games have kind of got the rights, at least in America, and have a new version out, and that's 2 to 5. So obviously you can play with a lot of people, and generally, it's a classic Euro. There isn't too much change if you're playing at 2 or if you're playing at 5. The only thing we would say is this could depend on what you like your games to be, because at being classic Euro, there's not so much interaction, but there is kind of actually a little more interaction than most in terms of you have a central board where you're moving your people around and building houses, and this stays the same size in terms of space availability, though there's some extra goods to pick up with more people, but so you'll be bumping into people more at higher player counts. There's a lot of tracks where if you're the first person to this space or to be in first position, you get something. And with more people, it obviously becomes much tighter and there's more chance it's not going to be you. So if you want your games to be a bit tighter, you might prefer it at 4 or 5. But if you like them to be a bit lighter and more friendly and to explore the mechanisms, you're going to prefer it at 2. But either way, it is really brilliant at any player count, to be honest. And the general feel of the game doesn't change too much.
Yeah, so like Farrell says, if you like your games to be a little bit looser in terms of direct competition, then you're going to prefer Orléans at 2 players. At 2, it allows you to really explore the systems and to be point maximizing without having to worry about doing very specific things, just to beat your other players to it. So we really love Orléans and would highly recommend it.
Modern classic.
Modern classic.
Yeah.
Modern beige trader classic.
Now we have Intrepid, which is a cooperative game, and I think it's the only one on the list. And that is because we hate co-ops. No, not really. It's just that we're both savages and we prefer direct competition. So we tend to prefer competitive games.
Just want to beat you.
Yeah, and also generally competitive games, there's more of a question about the player count because cooperatives scale quite well. But in this one, you are an astronaut aboard the International Space Station and some sort of disaster has occurred. Maybe a meteorite has hit the space station and you kind of have to run around repairing stuff to survive. So it's kind of grim if you die because everyone aboard the ISS has just died. But this is kind of a dice manipulation puzzle game where you're going to play as an astronaut and they all have a unique way of manipulating dice and they have to put these dice on tiles showing specific faces to activate that tile and produce resources. And you kind of use the powers on these tiles and your own powers to manipulate the dice.
Yep. So why play at 2 players? Well, as Farrell mentioned, it's a cooperative and they are generally scaling pretty well. So the experience is going to be, pretty similar at 2 to 4 players. However, we personally actually think that the 2-player count is the best for Intrepid.
Yeah. Because
we do think that playing solo, it would be kind of too many boards for one person to manage comfortably and it's a bit too much. And at 4 players, it's much tougher to keep track of what everyone else is doing and to know how and when to collaborate best, particularly because each player is playing quite differently. So we do think 2 really is the sweet spot here in terms of the tiles that you have to work with versus the puzzle that you get back out of it.
Yeah. So, we prefer to play at 2, but it's going to be equally as great at 4, I just think, or 1 or whatever, 3. It's just more comfortable, I think, at 2. And this is actually maybe my favourite cooperative of the moment. I just really like the theme. I think it's quite a nice theme. I think it's an interesting puzzle. And this is perfect for people who want cooperative games and want to completely avoid quarterbacking. Because you cannot do that in this game. Because much in the way of how Spirit Island handles it, because players are doing these asymmetric astronauts and manipulating dice in different ways, you really have no concept of what they're doing or how they're doing it. So you can't dictate to them to do their own stuff because you're on your own tiles over here. So that's quite nice. But yeah, if you like dice rolling, if you like puzzles, if you like cooperative games, this is a lovely big box cooperative.
I was going to say lovely, but nearly did ruin our relationship. So,
oh yeah, that's true. Because
be careful of that.
Yeah, if you've failed because the other person can't do simple addition.
It's the lack of quarterbacking means that you might actually get shouted at by the other person.
True. That is true.
But maybe that's just us.
You told me you could make 13 energy.
We're savages.
Yeah. That is Intrepid.
So next up we have Mind Management, which is a hidden movement game for 1 to 5 players, which will be head-to-head if you play with 2 players or 1 versus many if you play at more. And you either take the role of the agency or the rogue agents. And the goal of the agency is to move around the board recruiting new agents secretly, passing through certain spaces on the player board which have certain icons on them which match a set of cards that are behind a hidden screen. And the role of the rogue agents is to hunt them down and stop them. You also have the game expanding out as you can add in different content the more games you play, which might give one side a crazy power. So you'll be having some really good cat and mouse battles.
So why play this at 2? Why not play it at 2? Honestly, this is the kind of game that this list was made for, because I feel like this is a kind of game that people will look at and go, oh, it's 1 to 5 players. It seems to be 1 versus many. It's only 2 of us, are we going to get the same experience as having a bunch of people? No, this game is better at 2. Play it at 2 and 2 only, honestly. No, not really, but so what it is that when you have 2, this game is a tense head-to-head battle of the wits. You have the rogue agent who controls all of them, and you have the agency. And I'm just pointing like this because basically who me and Tally are every single time.
Yeah.
And it's head to head, and it's very tight, and everyone's in control of everything. But the more players you get, you add them all to the Rogue Agents team, which means that you're diluting down your kind of gameplay experience by having all. Because if you have 4 or 5 players, 4 of them will be Rogue Agents, 1 will have a Rogue Agent each. But that means that you're now getting 0.5 turns to every 2 of the agency's turns, because you move your 1 character, someone else moves their character, agency turn. The other 2 players do their stuff, comes back to you. And it's not as fun as being, directly in control of everything and playing alternate turns. And the other thing is that the more people you have, obviously you're kind of cooperating, and this game is primed for quarterbacking. I think particularly if you have one player that's more experienced. And the reason for this is that it really demands intense cooperation, and you will have to agree on the best path and what you're doing. So if you get people that don't, and people start going, I want to do this, you're going to lose. And on top of that, you get people quarterbacking because they don't want to lose and be like, no, you've got to go here.
Yeah.
And overriding people. So yeah.
I mean, honestly, we are absolutely in love with this game, and it's almost certainly going to be on our top 10 best games of 2022 100%. Lists. And we are only in January, so make of that what you will. It is amazing at any player count. It's just that we do think it's better at 2. Yeah. It's more of a tense tactical battle for all 100%. Of the reasons Farrell mentioned above. It also oozes theme. The production quality is amazing. The art direction is just fantastic. And it also has a lot of variability because of the different content packs that you can add in. Yeah. So definitely a recommendation.
I'll say that I think on Board Game Geek, they agree with us because the recommended player count is 2 or 3, I think. So yeah, but do not sleep on this one. Here we have Hadrian's Wall, a heavy flip and write that's based around building Hadrian's Wall and the kind of surrounding cities and populating it with people and giving them theatre and stuff like that, but also defending against attacks from the Picts. And how this works is at the beginning of a round, you're going to flip a card. It's going to give you a bunch of resources, which are actually physical tokens in this game. And then you're going to spend them to tick out boxes on big sheets of paper. And as you tick out these boxes, you can do all kinds of different tracks, and they all do different things and give you different stuff or ways to score points or whatever. But sometimes you'll fill in a box and it'll have an image of a resource, and then you get that resource. So the game kind of is to spin out these resources for as long as possible by smartly filling boxes that give you some, investing them, and so on.
Yeah. So why play at 2? Well, quite honestly, this is something that we would only ever play at 2 or solo, I guess, because it's one of the most solitaire gaming experiences we've ever had, even more so than the usual something and writes. Yeah. If we had people coming over for a gaming night, we would never put this down in front of them because it's like you're all just sitting around having quiet time, almost like doing a school test. Yeah. So we definitely think this is something to play with someone that you live with, for instance, where you can both just be comfortable sitting down, having some quiet time and gaming together. Yeah.
I think what's funny is this game plays 1 to 6 players. And that's a lot of players, right? But the best player count on BGG, I just looked, is 1. Which I think just is a testament to how solo this game is. But yeah, this is for, if you, play as a couple or housemates or family, this is what that game's for. It's nice to sit down. And it's competitive, but you're kind of doing your own thing. It's a nice quiet time, maybe with some tea or something. But if you like heavier games, if you like roll and writes, and if you like resource management and crossing out boxes, then it's for you. And what we really like is this is kind of the first roll and write or flip and write we've played that feels like a big tabletop experience because it comes with these physical resources. It's quite tactile. And it just has a bit of crunch, but it still plays in under an hour. So it's quite nice. Yeah. But yeah, that is Hadrian's Wall. So now we're getting to the games that are a little more complex, a little more mean, and nothing is meaner than Nemesis and Nemesis Lockdown. And This here is Nemesis Lockdown, which is the new standalone expansion to Nemesis. And this series is essentially Alien's board game. It's a survival horror board game, replicating the experience of the Alien movies, essentially, with the names and locations changed. And this is great for generating stories amongst your group. It's very random, but the randomness kind of combines to create unique experiences every time you play. And it can be hit or miss. You could have bad games, but you're going to have really wonderful games as well. It's going to be really exciting and really fun. And in this, what you're trying to do is you're trying to escape a facility on Mars. Night Stalkers have got out, they're killing people. And you'll have a secret objective, might be kill another player, might be find this room and send a signal and then get out of there. But you're going to try and do that. You might work with other players, you might not, but it's really good fun. It's a great experience and it's for 1 to 5 players.
Yeah, but why play it at 2 players? Well, honestly, we have mostly played this at 2 players in a semi-co-op way, and we've really enjoyed it. When we have had more players in the mix, whilst it's been really great to have them there for kind of the interaction and the table talk, we kind of found that the moment-to-moment gameplay is not that much different. We do think you might get a bit of a different sort of overall experience at 2 players versus higher player counts, because you're going to have more movement, more secret missions, more possible betrayal.
Yeah.
But in terms of the actual Nemesis experience, you're going to get that at any player count. And if anything, the bonus at playing at 2 is it can be a much quicker game, which is sometimes nice in a game that can run for more than 3 hours.
Yeah. Now, I'm sure this is one that people might disagree with. They might say, oh, I've never played at 2, it's much better with more. But I think the thing for us is that, like we said, the experience didn't change that much besides the niceness of just having another player and interaction and stuff. But this just isn't a game that we would go, oh, I'd like to play it this weekend, but we only have us 2. I'd just get it out, honestly. Yeah. And that's the point here, and the point of this series, I guess you could say, is that you will have a great time doing it at 2 players.
Yep.
And, so this is for people who, maybe you're a fan of like the Arkham games, you like the difficulty, a bit of randomness, you like generating stories and making up narratives, and no game arguably does it better than this, and that's why it's rated so highly, or at least the original Nemesis is.
Yeah.
So yeah, Nemesis Lockdown, good fun at 2 players.
Yeah, and we do have a couple of other videos about Nemesis Lockdown. The first one is a bit of a buyer's guide where we talk a bit about the differences between the original Nemesis and Nemesis Lockdown, what to look out for, who each version might be for. Yep. And then we also have a full review of Nemesis Lockdown. So we'll, again, link them in the description box below. So next up we have coffee traders. Now this is probably the most controversial pick on this list, because we're quite sure there's a lot of people out there that would say they would never play this with 2 players because the 2-player variant is rubbish.
And they're wrong.
We would say they are wrong.
Wrong. No, I'm joking, but they are wrong.
No, it's a fair opinion. However, I strongly disagree, because this was my number 2 game of 2021, and we have mostly played at 2 players.
Yeah.
And we think the 2-player variant is perfectly fine. In any case, Coffee Traders is a big, heavy, crunchy Euro about bringing fair trade cooperatives to the different coffee growing regions around the world. You have a bit of worker placement, area control, and resource management. So
why play at 2? And to be honest, more than any other game on this list, this is probably, well, it is best if you play with 3 to 5. I think we can agree. Because it is a highly interactive Euro. Like if you think of Barrage or something like that. But Barrage is actually surprisingly good at 2 players. We were surprised about that, I think, when we played it. But yeah, this is better. But the 2-player variant is actually quite good. And you have kind of an automated 3rd player. And it works really well. And honestly, it feels pretty similar to just playing at 3 players, which have also played at a fair amount. And what I particularly like that this kind of automated player does is that they have predictable actions, they have actions you can kind of maybe predict or that they will do, which then lends the game an element of strategy, because you can go, they're going to do this, which means I'm going to do this now, and I don't have to worry about doing that. And you can kind of use that to plan out better, because usually when you're playing with more players, the game's almost purely tactical in some aspects because you don't know what the other player is going to do. Whereas because you can predict this, it makes the strategic element in the game, which I think we really like.
Yeah.
And yeah, like I said, I mean, it's not that much different than playing at 3 players, to be honest. And this is a really good, heavy Euro game. It's excellent designs, really nice mechanics. I think it's fairly different to kind of what's out there at the moment.
Yeah, essentially, I mean, it's not the best game on this list for 2 players, but if you mostly play it 2 players and you like the sound of the game, either because the theme appeals to you or you like big, heavy, crunchy Euros, we personally don't think you should let that kind of put you off.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
you won't be disappointed if you do play it 2 players, according to our own experience. Yeah. It is a terrifically designed Euro that we do feel like maybe didn't get the attention it deserves, but that could be due to the fact it's a very expensive game.
Yeah, I think that's kind of an issue as well with the 2-player aspect, is that because it would be nicer to occasionally play it with like 4, if you only ever will play it at 2, it is fairly expensive, so that's maybe the biggest issue. Yeah,
value for money is something to consider for you. But yeah, as I said, it was my number 2 game of 2021, which I think is a very prestigious award. So that was Coffee Traders, and we also do have a full review of this one.
Last but not least, although probably heaviest, we have Imperial Steam. And this is a railway building game. And although the box says Austria, you're going to kind of build railways in countries surrounding Austria as well. And you're going to be building railways and making industries and building train stations. And the point of the game is to make the most money by the end of it. Classic. You can classically complete objectives. You can manipulate stock in your company. And it's a very brutally difficult, hard game where you never have enough money to pay for things and you always want to do more than you can. You're very limited in what you can kind of do. Like you could only buy 1 resource every time you go to the market. But if you go to the market again, you have to pay, like lose reputation. So yeah, so it's a tricky one. Yeah, definitely. Very brutal. But why play it at 2 players? Well, firstly, it's a surprisingly quick game at 2 players despite the complexity. And it's always kind of nice to have these games in your collection where you get that big, heavy experience, but you don't have to always be spending 2 hours on the game. Secondly, the game has special tiles and boards for each of the player counts, and these do successfully elicit some of the same crunch, so it kind of scales well in that way. The main differences are going to be on the main board because it doesn't change size according to the player counts. So you're going to get a bit more crunch when you're trying to build out your railways, particularly because all of the players begin in Vienna and you're going to be racing to try and get to the cities that allow you to deliver the goods. Generally, players can't have more than 2 tracks coming off of a single city, and to build a track where a player already is requires you to pay them money, which, as Farrell said, is an extremely tight resource. So it's going to be a bit more brutal in terms of the fight for space in 4 players than it is at 2. But at 2, you are going to still be coming together and fighting over the tracks, but probably just a bit less often. Yeah. So I think it depends, obviously, how you like your games, but honestly, it's actually maybe preferable to just to have that bit of breathing room with building the railways because the rest of the game is so tough and brutal. But I think no matter what player count you play it as, it's going to be much the same experience because, as I said, this more than many other games has excellently designed the feel to be the same at each player count because of these different tiles and boards that it incorporates. Yeah. And who is this for? Well, people that love really brutal games, but games that the more you play, the more you can work out the mechanisms. And you'll play the first game and maybe you'll get $200, and then you'll play the 5th game and you'll get like 1,000, and you're like, I would never have believed that possible from my first play. Yeah. So it's good if you want a game that you can keep, especially if you're only going to play it 2 player, kind of have this meta of practicing it and getting better and getting more competitive. But yeah, that is the final game on this list, Imperial Steam. And just to round off our video, we're just going to give a bit of a shout out to some honourable mentions of some games that are specifically designed for 2 players that we have been really enjoying. Yeah. And they are Mantis Falls, Summoner Wars, 2nd edition,
and Cape Europe, which if you're a regular viewer of our channel, you know probably that we are absolutely obsessed with.
Yeah. So this is almost certainly gone in like Caper, our top 10 for this year, maybe our top 10 of all time, wouldn't surprise me. And it made me laugh because the Dice Tower have just done their top 100 and it was in Z Garcia's number 15, I think.
Yeah.
And
Fair.
straight in there. So yeah, so we've been loving that. That is the ultimate 2-player head-to-head game for us, I think.
Yeah.
Mantis Falls is really cool because it is actually 2 to 3 players.
Yes.
So it's a bit of a cheat, but we didn't include it in this video just because, I mean, it's for 2 to 3 players. Like, it's basically specifically for 2 players, right?
Yeah.
And it's probably better at 2 players, we think, as well. And this is a little social kind of deception deduction game that might be cooperative when you play, or it might not. And that's kind of where this deduction comes from, because you won't know if you can trust the other player. And it's really good fun, and it kind of evolves as you play. And then why don't you tell about Summoner Wars, which was on both of our top 10 lists of last year.
Yeah, so it's a kind of head-to-head game where you each play as a different faction. And I'll kind of describe it as a bit chess-like. So you have a hand of cards and you're drawing them out and you place them on certain places on your board and you're kind of moving them around. You go through a series of actions, which is always the same every round. So summon, move, attack. And you've really got to think about where you're moving your cards to eliminate the other player's units. So you have to really think,
right?
Yeah, spatial puzzle, and you have limited amount that you can do. So you can only attack 3 times, only move 2 times. So you have to be very careful with what you're doing and optimize all the time, but also be anticipating what the other player might do to you. For me, that was a big surprise because I kind of judged it by the cover. Looked like not really my thing, but actually it's really fun, really tense. The games usually go on for a lot longer than we think they're going to because it's such a tense battle. So we really enjoy that. And for Caper Europe, we have both a playthrough video and a full review, which you can check out. And we also have a review for Mantis Falls if you want to know more about it.
And generally, although we've said it sometimes, a lot of these games, not all of them, we have content for, and we're going to link that down below, reviews of a lot of them, or playthroughs for like the Quest for El Dorado. And yeah, we'll link that down below. And essentially, we really just hope this was helpful to you. And if it was, again, we'd really appreciate it if you subscribed. If you have any questions, please let us know.
Yep.
And please tell us your favorite games that fit into this category.
Yeah.
But most importantly,
Thanks
thank you for watching.